Hi everyone. This is quite a challenge because it's the last session before the lunch. The lunch has very high expectations, so we're also running a bit short on time. Luckily, my slides were created in a way so I can skip by your election out parts. I also have to mention Tisho there. He's probably the only Michelin-trained biotechnologist in the region. He will be preparing our product as a demo while I speak. Some of you may actually want to try it later. Okay, so firstly, a little bit. I'm no longer in IT, so please help me. No. Thanks. First of all, I should tell you a little bit something about myself. First of all, I grew up under psychiatric supervision. You can ask my mom, she's a psychiatrist and she's sitting somewhere there. So this made a few quite interesting perspectives to happen in my life. The first one was, she and my dad, they were also very early adopters of vegetarian diets. I think now it's already more than 30 years ago. And, I've never stopped eating meat. I ate meat at my Grammys and so on, but they were a good role model. So after studying food and science, which, to put it shortly, is still the same industry as it was maybe 50 years ago in terms of it all comes down to a lot of steel barrels and machinery, etc. But after that, I kind of felt I needed to exit it because I could not reconcile with the things the food industry was, on one side, teaching me to do that are good, and the other side is actually doing and what they were feeding us. So I kind of escaped into IT, where I spent 12 years, and in the meantime, I got some kids, and I started looking, well, can I do something with this food thing altogether? So about 2 years ago, I went on a mission to solve one of the big problems that basically all my smart co-lecturers today mentioned at some point, like meat is a problem because of its origins, meat is a problem because of its animal exploitation, meat is a problem because of its environmental impact, and meat is a problem because it's so damn good and so hard to replace. My founders and I went on a quest and decided to make a product that tries to solve all those problems with one product. But first, there's some notions that I believe to be true that allowed me to work on a product that I work on. So the first one is, not all processed food is bad. Nowadays, processed food is almost like a negative word for most food. But then, when you ask somebody what's processed, most people don't have a unique answer, right? Is flour a processed food? Well, depending how you look at it, right? Is honey a processed food? Well, depending on how you look at it. So every food can be processed. Every food can be subtracted of things. Every food can be added of things. Now, those things, bad things can be subtracted, such as dirt and debris and harmful bacteria. But also good things can be subtracted. The second thing that I believe is true is that we're about 2 years away from the point where in QSR restaurants, so in fast food chains, we will start paying an extra for actual meat. Why is that? Because the alternatives, the plant-based alternatives in volume are that much cheaper. And then the final thing is, I believe that the fiber will be the new protein in 5 years. We're all about protein now, keto diets, all the bullshit. I think we're about 5 years away from we'll find out something is wrong with huge protein intake, and then we'll focus on fiber, which is the new nutritional star. And now, to the not so enjoyable part. We've seen this part quite a lot, so la 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 la, substantial la la la, we don't need that. Here, this is the Canadian food plate. This is their non-industry biased way of the recommendation of what people should eat. You see there's still some eggs, some fish, a little bit of dairy, but a lot of legumes. And my question when I saw this was, okay, so this is a scientifically valid way of eating, but how do I stuff all this in me? Well, I'm going to skip this again. There's this problem, right? So we should eat a lot of legumes and a lot of nuts and reduce the beef, lamb, and pork as protein sources quite a lot. How do we do this in a way that kind of makes sense? Well, this is our competitor, right? So this is what today would be considered a very tasteful plate in the majority of the planet. So some vegetables, almost zero carbs, and a lot of red protein. How do we go about solving the expectations of the consumer, which is this, and the reality of a well-balanced diet, which is this? How do we solve this discrepancy? Well, we turn to technology, obviously, because even though I like the diversification and eating like the early tribes, you know, this is not sustainable. This way of eating, as much as I agree with the fact that we need to strive to and cherish the values that that kind of eating gave, but we have to rely on technology because there's just too many of us. We need to exploit technology in some point. So. For meats, we have three main approaches: cultivated, plant-based, and fermentation. Who has had a plant-based meat alternative? Raise your hands. Okay, almost everybody. Who has had a fermented meat alternative? Raise your hands. Okay, so half of you never ate mushrooms? Because essentially, most of the time what we're talking about is commercially grown, not the upper, but the lower part of the mushroom, the mycelia, which is then compressed into a shape. How about cultivated meat? Who would eat it if you could have it today? Raise your hands. Would you try it? Okay, almost everybody would try it. Now, one of the big keys, time savers for this lecture is, do you want to know how each of these technologies work? Raise your hands. Who wants to know? Okay, that's a vast majority. So I've given myself 3 minutes to explain. Which one first? Yeah, it doesn't actually work because only the paid version would go all the way around, so it'd only go to 45. Don't worry about it. It's going to be 3 minutes, I promise. So, okay, first cultivated meat. So we take a cow, we put a syringe into a cow, take out some muscles. Hopefully they are not the one with the mad cow disease. And then we squeeze those cells into a bioreactor, which is filled with growth media and other potentially hard to source things. And then what is the end result? So what do you think the end result of that cultivation is? How does that thing look like? Can somebody give me an idea? Is it a mush? Okay. Who thinks it's more than a mush? Nobody. So yeah, you're right. It's a mush. So then you have to either inject this mush into something else. It's called scaffolding, and it can be made out of plants or mushrooms or anything else, or even like, you know, just formed in a shape or something else. But there are a few really good applications of mush in our food system. Who has an idea? What would be a really good application of a mushy substance that you could cultivate? What mushy animal products do we eat today? Oysters. Oysters are actually quite hard. But foie gras is actually something that, in my take, is going to be one of the first products that will be completely cell cultured when it comes to the market, because it's all one bunch of uniform cells. So think of it, anything that's mushy, anything that doesn't have really a lot of structure, we're quite close of getting to that. anything that has a lot of structure, such as a marbled beef steak, we have a lot of work to do to get there. So then we have the mycelia. I kind of spoke about that. So basically what you do is you select the right mushrooms, you grow them in large quantities, and then you harvest the mushrooms and basically compress them using different technologies into, meat-like shapes. I find this a very attractive way of doing meat. There's just one huge limitation. Mushrooms bring a lot of its own flavor into the game, but also it's when you grow the product like that, it still requires a lot of other things. So you have to add fat to the mushroom. So it's not a one-stop solution. And then plant-based food. We use words like high moisture extrusion, words like marinating, etc., etc. So many different ways of treating the plant protein to behave, to get to a shape of a muscle fiber, and then we also inject fats into that. So, like generally, that was about 3 minutes of that technology. So, but how do we know which of those technologies will actually be good? How do you know if a piece of meat is good? What does it have to give you? What does it have to provide to you? Taste. What else? Texture. Okay. What else? Health. Smell. Yes. Okay. What else? The look. Exactly. What else? The experience of cooking. The experience of purchasing, the cost of purchasing, how socially acceptable it is. So see, meat has a lot of all of these benefits that it comes in their favor, and it's hard to create. So the food industry has gone through many different iterations of this. This is what I call the first generation plant-based foods. I give all the traditional fermented, tempeh and seitans and all of that also in this category. This is your classical veggie burger, mixed vegetables together with a binder in a patty. You would grill it and call it a, veggie burger, which really was not. Then the second generation came. This is taken from the Beyond Burger website. So it's their burger and it's their sausage. You see, it's already looking really like a meaty product that we're used to, and also the sausage is looking quite convincing. But still, consumers refuse it. Now they refuse it for many reasons. We call it healthy, green, blah blah blah, brainwashing bullshit. Yes, people don't want to respond to that. We also state a lot of ingredients in this product, and people don't want to do this because meat is just one ingredient, right? Forget about all the additives used to production. But also, it's just a burger. And this is the third generation of the product. This is our product, by the way, served in two different ways. And you can see, because it can be cooked in many different forms, people have started becoming creative with it. So the creativity of meat is also important. Each of us knows at least 5 or 6 meat dishes, how you cut this, how you cut that. We're talking about males being really prominent on the grill. Yes, another obstacle to overcome. So what's different? Our technology uses what we called a special 3D assembly process, and we basically assemble the lean and the fat part of the muscle together, so you get the marbling result in the end, which you'll be able to see over there. But what it also gives you, it gives you the rich, fibrous, and blend of fat and lean muscle experience in your mouth when you consume it. But, the big question in the room is, why would you even want to imitate meat? Why couldn't you just use the meat that we already have, reduce its consumption, and just, source your protein from the plants in another way? I think that's just impossible, because we heard from at least 3 people today in the audience how hard is it for people to change their behavioral patterns. I'm not saying this is the end, and this is the end state, and I don't want to be the company that succeeds by fooling people into thinking it's meat. Honestly, I don't want to do that. But I do think this is the gateway step into a new future where we consume protein from plants with no prejudice, and maybe it will take a totally different form. Maybe we won't be talking about shapes, but the individual properties that we listed before, the smell, the taste, the way of cooking, the looks, all of that will be better with this kind of product. That's why you imitate. So where does it start? It starts with bringing this food. We talked about that at the beginning. How important it is to cook for your family or with your family. It also comes down to convincing the skeptics. So who considers themselves a skeptic in regarding plant-based foods, plant-based meats? Okay, raise your hand. I'm not going to be offended. Okay, cool. So I think the technology has to prove itself, but it's definitely not done yet. So I told you I'm going to be a bit brief. This is it.